From the saturated palette, fields so green they glow, flowers that pop in purple blues, to the bloody chocolate box interiors conjured by production designer Mark Digby and set decorator Michelle Day, who you've worked with before. We're in a world of big bad wolves and poisoned apples. The cinematography is glorious, jumping from bright British landscapes and bold silhouettes to glaring, devilish red light in a heartbeat. Rob Hardy ASC BSC. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. Is everyone okay after that?
Yes, it sort of instills a bit of. Well, it's pretty visceral, isn't it?
It is.
It's hard to put into words. Isn't
I think I'm still. This is maybe well, obviously I'd seen it a lot during the grade, but it's really only the second time proper I've actually sat in a cinema and watched it, even though I did dip out for some of those really nice soft buns around the corner. But I do, I kind of feel the same that I always seem to do when I watch that film, is slightly in shock. And even now, having been through it all many times over.
You've worked with Alex. How many times is it now?
I think, well, we've just finished, maybe it's number 5. Ex Machina Annihilation. Sorry, Devs. And then 5. Yeah,
it's 5 now, right, okay.
Yeah.
He said that you work well together and you've got a lot of shorthand between you. He says you're a lovely man who never overbakes the photography. He obviously trusts you. Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
I think we've got to a point now where, in fact, I say we've got to a point, we were pretty much at that point in the very beginning where we sort of both kind of want the same thing, I guess. And so we just sort of, we get on with it, you know, and it's not ever really a question of how, you know, kind of looking into the ether for some inspiration. It's just more a case of, okay, this is what we want to do, and this is, we're going to try doing it like this, and more often than not, we end up doing it like this. But we do work very hard to get to the point where we feel we're ready to shoot. So we do a lot of groundwork, a lot of sort of not really research, because I think we're sort of beyond that. It's just everything's quite practical, basically. So we do sort of tend to explore avenues and figure stuff out, and if it's not working, we'll move to the next thing quite quickly. It doesn't tend to be much sort of preciousness about losing something or trying something else if one thing isn't working. And I kind of like that. I'm sort of like that anyway, and Alex is definitely like that. So we, you know, it's kind of a no bullshit approach, I suppose. It's just sort of like, okay, well, that was shit. Let's try again. Let's do this. You know.
It sounds like that both of you have developed a kind of a space where you're not necessarily hugely scrutinised. I mean, this was an A24 project, but you kind of, is it true? I mean, it's not in every case, of course, but there's no execs asking for a bit more coverage, or you know, it's sort of slightly, or you found yourself, even if it is working with a studio, you found a space where you are properly collaborating there up front, rather than doing anything by rote or trying to speak to anyone else's requirements.
Yeah, I think it's sort of got to a point where, you know, I mean, particularly with A24, is they were incredibly supportive and incredibly trusting as well of everyone involved, and obviously in particular Alex. You know, I think what they see is they see him as a filmmaker. They respect him as a filmmaker, so therefore, their job is to support that, you know, or at least that's what they feel their job is, to support that, and in this case, you know, particularly with a film like this, I would say, as difficult as this, that's a big ask from any studio, even by sort of A24 standards, although they do have a really amazing track record
of course.
you know, this kind of movie. So it found a nice home. I mean, we've had trouble in the past with issues with studios. I mean, Annihilation was sort of a case in point of that, and but we still sort of went ahead and did our thing, you know, because I guess in some ways it's, you know, you get that far, you make the movie, and you know, as an artist, you want to tell that story in a very particular way, and why do it any other way? And yes, okay, admittedly, there is a lot of money involved and people's
Somebody
jobs
else's
on the
money.
line and somebody else's money. But yeah, I mean, in the case of this, you know, it's a sort of it's a very particular kind of movie. So it has a, you know, I can't imagine it probably would have done well in Oklahoma or in the Midwest somewhere. I don't know. Maybe it did. I don't know. But I remember we were just on Civil War we were right at the end of the shoot, and Alex and I were out to dinner with the actors, and he was getting these texts from the studio, and he's like, oh God, you know, the numbers are coming in, it's been out for a week or whatever it was, and he was really concerned, and he said, you know, they want to speak to me, and I was like, well, what do you think they're going to say? I mean, and he said, well, they're probably going to say that, you know, we support you. And I was like, that's fucking amazing. I mean, for any filmmaker to be in that position, you know, I think it's very lucky, and it's not without putting the work in. I think, you know.
Well, it's clearly proved successful. I mean, you two as a team, but also, as I mentioned, Mark and even Michelle, and you know, it works.
It doesn't always feel like it's working. I mean, we felt. I think I told you this already, but we were just on this other thing, Civil War, and we were right in the middle. It's a big sort of epic production, kind of road movie, war film, and we were sort of right in the middle of it, and everything's sort of going wrong, and just big logistics and all sorts of things. We're trying to figure it out, and our lead, Kirsten Dunst, was sat in his car, and Alex and I were there, and she asked us, she said, you guys, she said, what's the hardest film you've done together? And we both said, without even pausing, we just went, men. And it was definitely that. It was, I guess in its simplicity, there's something about it, you know. I mean, you'd say, well, it's a two-hander. Well, okay, two actors really, predominantly, one location, predominantly. And on paper, you know, you're like, okay, this is going to be great. It's going to be contained, and we're going to have some fun with this. And it was a very, very, very difficult film to make. And I don't mean that everyone was lovely. The cast were amazing. Jesse is amazing. Rory's amazing. It just, for some reason, and I couldn't tell you specifically why, but there was something in there that was it was arduous. It was really difficult to get to the points that we wanted to get to.
So it was made during one of the lockdowns between March and May of 21. Is that, I mean, and as you say, it's one location.
Yeah.
And you shot for how many weeks?
We shot, I think, for 6 weeks.
Right.
The location was in the Cotswolds, this house that was found, which the reason it was chosen was because it was a 10-minute drive from Alex's dad's place. So,
so the perfect location.
Yeah, he was like, "This is it, it's done, brilliant, love it." You know, I kind of, I think there were other options. But anyway, yeah, 6 weeks, and then three of which were nights.
Right.
And of course, those nights we always shoot chronologically, always.
Right.
Which can be a scheduling nightmare, but it just is. We just do that. It's driven by Alex, but I think it's a great way of doing it. The actors love it. Everybody kind of, it just makes sense. You know?
Yes.
so by the time we got to the nights, we'd pretty much shot everything that we needed to shoot in daylight hours, but our days were, it was getting dark at like 10 and getting light at 4 in May, so we were having like 6-hour shoot days, which I think was part of the problem with lots of costume changes, makeup changes, VFX, everything. It was, and everything going wrong, everything just going wrong. Not always, but you know, it felt like.
I mean, you say on paper, it seems like it could be very straightforward.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, even I remember he could, because so during when the first lockdown happened, he wrote Civil War. A24 picked it up, said it's a big project, and the plan was to shoot it in 2021. We felt it was too soon. After, you know, as after the first or second lockdown or whatever it was like, okay, we could go now, but the feeling was it was just too soon. So in the interim, he just said, I've just written this horror movie, do you want to read it? And so he sent it over, and I loved it, because I love horror movies. I've rarely, in fact, I think it's only really the first time I've actually properly shot a horror film, I think.
Well, some people would say that most of Alex's stuff is fairly
cerebrally
horrible.
Horror. Yeah. I think Annihilation has some good kind of horror beats in it, but and so he'd written the script. He said to me, he was really annoyed about it. He said, it took me 5 fucking days to write this script, and I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? It took you 5 days, right? But he said it in a way that wasn't really like, it was, you know, he was like, it took me 5 days. It was like, he was just really annoyed about it, because
it took so long.
Exactly. He just wanted to, he said it was like watching a movie in slow motion over a period of 5 days. He was just so annoyed by the fact that he had to sit through this thing for 5 days, whereas he wanted to write it in, whatever it is, 92 minutes or something. And it reads like that. I mean, it's just like snappy, snap, snap, snap. And then in the script, towards the end, this is the script that the studio had, it said that the characters transition from one to the other. And that was kind of it. There was no other explanation about what that meant or how we were going to do it. And so the whole birthing thing was something that came out of our process, really. And then we shot it, and because of COVID, and because, you know, nobody was coming over from the States, and they were obviously letting us get on with it. And then he was about to do a sort of pre-screening to the studio, sort of like pre-fine cut screening, and he was like, "Oh shit, I haven't told him about the birthing thing." They still think it's transitioning. But
like a Star Trek thing.
Yeah, like a sort of weird Star Trek thing. But they were okay with it.
Right.
And if they weren't, they didn't say anything. So
They probably just left stunned.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of. I mean, it feels like with the colours. I mean, let's talk about the colours. There's I read something that Alex talked about. There's a very definite red and green colour palettes, and also then with the flashbacks, there's like an amber. So watching it was like, is there a traffic light? Is there something going on here?
It's all based on traffic lights.
It's all traffic lights.
It's all based on traffic lights. I was in a cab on my way into town one day, and I was like, how am I going to colour this movie? And
I know.
Traffic lights.
I mean, so
they're complementary colours. I mean,
what was that? What was the colour scheme? Was there a thinking behind that, or was it just a handy device?
I think really the sort of seed of it came from this idea that we were, obviously it's location led, but at the same time from a sort of conceptual point of view, this idea that green being our sort of dominant landscape colour was something that we were going to have to confront, you know, and I've over the years sort of struggled with it, and particularly in this country, the sort of, you know, shooting in a lush forest. I know for me personally, I because I'm just not good enough. I don't know. I just never know how to sort of harness it. And so this was a sort of case of let's just attack it head on and use it to our advantage. So, you know, we really sort of explored, and again, this was like during the sort of pre-production process. We were shooting tests, and of course, getting Asa, Shaul involved, and we would look at the way in which the sort of greens interacted with various things, skin tones, what have you, and we were sort of looking for a way to find a green that was sort of really upfront, but without sort of cheapening it, which is a hard thing to do. There's a fine line we discovered, which we crossed the line many times during the grade and came back. So it started with that, and then out of that came, you know, the sort of red has been a kind of theme, and I guess it's nothing new for a lot of people in this room to bathe things in red, you know. Yeah. But the amber element, apart from the sort of the traffic light reference, came from this idea that ultimately in that flat, it was just purely a practical thing, is that in that apartment, which is right opposite Tower Bridge, we were maybe 3 floors up. I think it was 3 floors. Johnny's here, Johnny Franklin, gaffer, you might know, because he was the one
He'll know, he'll
put
have
the scaffs up. Fucking 3 floors. Or it might have been the first floor, I can't remember. But anyway, it was high.
It was usually the top floor, isn't it?
It wasn't practical. Whatever it was, it just wasn't practical.
Top floor locations.
The idea being that this whole sort of, that whole sequence takes place during sunset. And of course, what you have in this country rarely is a sort of sunset.
In the right place.
In the right place at the right time, specifically down by the river near Tower Bridge. So the idea was like, okay, well look, we can sort of create something, but because we have floor-to-ceiling windows and the outside and the inside are sort of equal spaces, so everything complements everything else, and we're not denying one over the other. Both of those things have to exist in tandem. So I sort of pushed it a little bit further and just basically said, look, why don't we just use this colour and see how it will interact with the exterior and just the sort of sheet grey London skies. And when you put amber up, or that particular colour, it does a very specific thing to when it pollutes with grey, with the grey buildings and the sort of muddy river and the sheet grey skies. It turns those things into, it makes them appear quite elegant, I suppose, and steely, and not sort of another British sky, you know. And so I really, really enjoyed the sort of play between the two things. And that's kind of how that developed. And of course, in the grade, we ramped it up a little bit.
But it also helped it obviously separate it out into flashback.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you do flashbacks? You know, it's always
I suppose in that way, I mean, I'm always conscious of avoiding that. You know, the flashback thing, it's like, oh, okay, we're in a flashback. Let's make it look different. And
sepia.
Yeah. And it wasn't...
Super 8.
Super 8, exactly. Let's show it on film. It wasn't supposed to be that, even though I guess in some ways that's sort of how it appears now. It's like, okay, so we're doing this thing, so we have to give it... But what it does do, really, I think, effectively, is it isolates that world. And so there's no question when you go back to it, you know where you are. So in narrative terms, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So I do get the reasoning behind trying to separate those things. But it was more really about sort of serving it for its own self, rather than its place, you know, its delicate place in the narrative as a whole. Yeah.
As the story goes along, I mean, it feels like it's the resonance of it obviously then bleeds through, and then by the end of it, it's sort of almost a sort of sodium-y city light that's in the last scene.
Yes.
When James turns up.
That's right. Yeah. Because it's you know, the motivation.
It brings that story back in.
It does. Yeah, it's exactly that. And it, you know, obviously the motivation is in that particular scene is the security light element. But then this kind of this sort of weird kind of hint that actually, is it something else? Is it that, or is it, you know, is it a mixture of that, and is daylight seeping in, but it's clearly not because it's night outside, and so there's a sort of like a slight sort of idea of disorientation.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a fair bit of disorientation. So you shot this. I'm going to guess that you shot this on a Venice.
A good guess. Good guess.
I know you're a fan of the Venice.
Yeah, I'm a fan. We shot the majority of it on using the Stabili,
Right.
for a number of reasons, mostly practical, because there were tight spaces. So I wanted something that I could use off a dolly as a remote head. Again, because we're right in the thick of the whole COVID thing, and I'm sure a lot of people did the same over the last couple of years, and I'm sure you did, where you would just go, if you could go to a remote head and keep everybody out of the room. So there was that element. And also, you know, we were looking for something that was, I suppose it was this kind of holy grail thing that we were always after, or Alex and I have always been after, is like, we sort of want to find something that isn't handheld, it's not Steadicam, and after Men, actually, Stabili was part of that list, but has its own sort of voice and its own very particular way of moving, and its own sort of practical application. Interestingly, on Civil War, we've done something else now, and we found something that could really interact in a way that does something very, very different. But that's another.
We'll talk about that.
Talk about that next time.
I think I know what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, we were Stabili for most of it. I say that that's because that's the international symbol for Stabili.
For gimbals. Going back to the idea that it sort of looks simple on paper, and the fact that this was a bit of an interim project, so it feels like a bit of a lockdown thing where it's almost a back to basics. You know, it was it looked didn't look simple. It looked elegantly. You know, it wasn't a big infrastructure, was it?
Yeah.
It wasn't lots of
enormous
lighting, or it was.
No.
It was beautifully subtle. I mean, it looked astonishing. I love it.
It was quiet.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
I suppose, in a sense, and this is something I said to Alex, like at the very beginning of the process as well. It's like, you know, we've never done anything where, and this might be one of the reasons why I found it quite difficult. But I said we never really. Everything we've done up until this point, and consequently, we sort of started with a completely blank canvas, and the world is then created, and then we enter the world. In the case of Devs, like the Devs Cube, or an Annihilation with this surreal hallucinogenic landscape, Ex Machina. So it's like everything has a very specific, and particularly in terms of design, a kind of it's taking a position. Whereas Men, it was the first time we'd really done anything where we were kind of trying to implant our world onto something that already exists in a way that exists in people's, you know, consciousness. So like everybody knows, well, not everybody, but you know, you know the English countryside, right? So you know the Cotswolds, or you get it. There are sort of symbols that tell us what this is, and we couldn't avoid those things. So it's almost like I didn't want to look at the house. I never wanted to look at the rooms inside the house, but I had to tell that story. And it could have been any. It wasn't specifically that house. It's like, but how then do we sort of apply our particular kind of I don't want to say vision, but it kind of is, I suppose. Our sort of point of view to something that already exists in people's minds.
Yes.
So how do you subvert that?
Well, it's quite a not to simplify it, but that the horror trope, and of that of being watched and presence, and then and being attacked, all of that stuff. There's lots of received, like you say, lots of received Gothic ideas of that sort of horror thing. I mean, even her dress, it's like an all new. There's lots of Cronenberg, and there's a bit of Argento, and there's lots of received ideas of horror, but I think that's what it still stands up as its own thing, because there's we've all done a bit of folk horror.
Love it.
But it's
you're the master of folk horror.
But it's there's something fascinating about it as well, because I guess there is a familiarity with a bit of that, the normal countryside, or being attacked in a home, or there's it plays on that, but it's something else, and it doesn't answer all of the questions. Yeah, which is great. It's okay.
Which is great, and I think horror for me has always been the ultimate genre in many respects, because I think in film terms, and obviously this is up for debate, but for me personally, I think in film terms, horror as a genre is the most freeing of all, and it's also the most sort of welcoming of ideas. That said, you then have very specific things that you need to hit. Very specific beats that you need to hit, which can be quite hard. Throughout the whole production, we were like, how do we make this scary? And Alex just kept saying to me, it's got to be scary. It's got to be scary. And it's hard.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a particularly scary film, but in the sense of there are very, very few genuinely scary films, but the great thing about horror is that it is the way in which it can sort of really play with people's consciousness and perceptions, and I think that's it's great strength.
There's two things that's come to mind with that. I think it's Jessie's performance.
Yeah.
She's carrying all of that.
Yeah.
She's doing all of that response for us. And then the other thing is focus. You look like you were wide open a fair amount, even on the day work. You've got beautiful. All pets full kind of rotating bokeh. What lenses did you use for that? And was that on purpose? And were you using the full sensor on Venice?
Yeah. I went to Charlie Todman, who's in the room actually, at Panavision, and
did you bring everyone?
Yeah, he looked at me and he just went like that, like he always does when I say, Charlie, what can we do? Okay, and then again we'll test everything. We'll test as much as we can, and there'll always be stacks of lenses in the room, and we'll go into the theatre, and again that's why Charlie's just like and he'll bring some more out, but it is always something. There's always something that comes out. Oh yeah, well there's this, there is. You probably don't want to see this.
You're not going to see one.
You're not going to want to, and it's all just gold. It's all gold, and that's why I love Panavision so much because there's so much of an inventory there that you can really, you've got something for everything, you know. In this case, we landed back into using the H series lenses, which I'd sort of touched on with devs. I shot devs on the C series, and I remember when I was testing in LA for that, Dan Sasaki said to me, because I said what I need is a sort of larger, I need a kind of large format spherical for some specific things that we're going to do, namely shooting the cube from the exterior elements of the cube, because the anamorphic, no matter which lenses we chose, there was the bend. We didn't really want that for that sort of architecture. And Dan Sasaki was like, "Oh yeah, you know, these H series, and you should check them out." And so I looked at them and tested, and I loved them, and they were great and beautiful. Of course, each set is slightly different-ish. And then I think really maybe Dan was telling me what I wanted to hear, which was, these lenses were the original C series. The C series are anamorphosized H series.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's true, Charlie, because you've always stayed a bit quiet about it, but it might be.
Okay.
And in my mind, it is.
Yeah, it's perfect. It fits.
But they have you know, it doesn't matter either way because it's still really beautiful old glass. And you know, I remember going into that church when we scouted the church, and you could see the sun coming through, as Rory's character Jeffrey says, comes through the window, and it's bathed in light, wonderful. And I remember thinking how we were going to introduce the vicar character. And there was going to be a moment, there had to be that moment, you know, it was crying out for something that was going to be probably completely over the top, which it ended up being. And I needed some glass that was going to sort of give it to me in no uncertain terms. So that's where we ended up.
Beautiful. Tell us briefly just about, we'll go ask this lovely audience for some questions. Tell us about the pub scene, because you described that as... you know, it was all of the characters, all of Rory's characters. See, I love Rory Kinnear.
Yeah.
It was very hard to see him as a baddie. He's not often a baddie, is he?
No, he's a lovely man.
How did you do the pub scene? You didn't. I mean, obviously the camera. We talked about this before. There's no motion control.
Yeah.
But it was all fairly straightforward, kind of lock-offs, or how
yeah.
did
I mean,
work?
we I don't think motion control was ever really an option, just simply because it's like, you know, you're dealing with something which is essentially like a puzzle, and you have very little time to do it. And motion control was something that would have been, it sort of actually logistically didn't make any sense, because had we used a motion control rig for any particular kind of shot, it would have had to have stayed in the room in the pub for 3 days. And then VFX would have had to have painted it out while we were shooting the other angles for the other characters that Rory was playing. So it's sort of, then you would have been in this weird sort of world where the VFX is kind of negating itself. So, and we were quite interested in just doing something quite elegant and simple and fairly straightforward, and you know.
There's only one bit where there's a bit of crossover, and that's from the barman and Jeffrey.
Yeah, we were trying our best to sort of...
There was a bit...
So basically we spent 2 days kind of in there pre-shoot, just figuring it out.
Okay.
Walking around with a stills camera, getting the blocking right, and then kind of going into the sort of mindfuck world of like, okay, so when we do this, when we have this camera position, it's going to stay here for this character and this character, but then Rory's going to go off and he's going to go into costume and he's going to come back, and then we have to shoot him across this way to this character, so that camera's going to have to move, so we have to mark the position of that camera. But we've marked the position of that camera, and the floor was covered in tape. It was like everywhere you looked, it was like a sort of strange kind of graph, or kind of like, you know, the Matrix. Everything was connected. Tables were connected, taped to other bits of furniture. It was a real head fuck, actually.
How long were his changes taking? Because if you're having to do, I mean,
Well,
that was, you were trying to do all those, shoot all those
yeah,
together.
because at first it was like, oh, it's going to take 3 hours. It's going to be 4 hours. It's going to take 4 hours, man. And we were just like, no,
Yeah.
they can't. And then eventually he would come in and it would take like he got into the landlord's costume in half an hour, but that's still half an hour. We would wait, you know. So not only were we, we were losing every moment. We were losing waiting. Then we would have to sort of restrict the amount of angles that we had. But in a way, I think it looks really simple, and it kind of needs to be.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It just sort of needs to be really straightforward, because I suppose in a way it's not really at all about, oh, look, there's 5 Rorys in the room.
Yeah.
You know, she's being told something and she's realising something. And then, I mean, my favourite part of that scene is where she exits the room and the door's closing. You just hear her saying, wankers. I just love that. It's just so brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did an amazing job. It's very good. Has anybody got any questions? Yep, there's one. Hello. What are we doing with are you just shouting it out? Shout it out. Oh, someone's going to throw a microphone at you.
Hi, I just wanted, because I saw the Helios in the film, which is a pretty good metaphor. I wonder if you use that lens as well, and what specific reason you choose to use that lens for those shots in the film.
Which one, sorry?
Helios.
Helios. You
Yes.
mean the
Yes, that rotated background, that one.
the one that goes into the
Yes.
into the deer's eye?
No.
No.
What was that? Was
What
that,
would-
was that,
It's
was
a
that
Russian
probe?
glass.
Yeah.
It's an old Russian glass. Yes,
Well, I think what you're saying is that, you know, that it's the vicar exterior when he's single with all the trees behind,
Yes,
and it
that's the
looks
one.
like it's the rotating bokeh. What was that? Was that H series? Or was
H
that-
series, yeah.
It
Yes,
was
H
H
series.
series.
Yeah.
I would have said that as well,
Yeah.
but there you are.
Yeah. What was
Yes.
the question?
no, the reason why you choose to use that lens.
Oh,
for the shot.
to use the H series.
Yes.
Because I suppose it's the same reason I would choose any kind of set of lenses, is that you know, everything comes down to does it serve the story? Is it the look of the movie? And it's kind of that simple, really. And you just sort of, I mean, everyone has a different process. Mine is to just kind of work through a whole series of things until you sort of discover the look. On a rare occasion, you might go in already thinking, that's what we're going to do. We don't need to look elsewhere. But in this case, I think you always have an idea in your mind where you think it's going to be, and then once you start testing, then other things will always be thrown up in an interesting way. And I think it's kind of part of the process, right, that I really enjoy, actually. So in this case, it was, like I said, like with that glass, it's just really beautiful glass. So it was just a question of taste. It's all a question of taste, isn't it? Ultimately, to some people.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Is most of the birthing scene, is it all real?
All of that birthing is real. Yeah, actually happened. Yeah. It took a while, months.
I mean, was that? It looked like there was obviously some practical effects,
Yeah,
but it looks like it was a number.
it was a number. It was a number. Yeah, it was. There was some. Yeah, there were practical elements. There had to be. But then a lot of those practical elements would do strange things that weren't really the things that we wanted them to do.
I mean, that was super Cronenberg-y, wasn't it? The birthing
Yeah.
of all that stuff on the back and
Yeah.
it coming out of all sorts of parts.
I think that's my favourite one, actually. That's sort of the one that comes out of his back. That's the one I like the most.
That's your favourite one,
Yeah.
Howard.
with all due respect to the cinematography and Johnny's lighting and all that, but that sound design was insane.
Yeah.
And I want to ask, how much was the sound design while you were filming? And I mean, there were moments. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's always something that comes up in conversation. So because it's part of the movie, right? So it matters. And like the tunnel sequence, for example, that was the thing that we always knew was going to be part of it. But this idea that natural sounds, and particularly voice sounds, and particularly voice sounds generated by Jesse, were going to form in some way notes that would form part of the soundtrack as a whole, or at least inform the soundtrack. So this idea that sound textures and everything that's gathered, in much in the same way that you would, go off and shoot some GVs or landscape stuff, it's the same approach, and again, it's all just part of the process from the very beginning, so that we know, as filmmakers going in, it's not just about, oh, this picture's got to look great. It's like, how is that picture going to sound?
It was so interwoven, though. I mean, they were just great.
Yeah.
Where they'd open a mouth and then music and sound. I mean, I found that
and,
fascinating.
And Ben and Jeff, again, I mean, Jeff was with us since Ex Machina, and in fact, both Ben and Jeff, sorry. And they're just such a great duo, I mean, they always do set visits. And,
That was great.
yeah.
Thank you.
You said that it was a challenging shoot overall.
Yeah.
Have you got any specific moments that you would be up for sharing with us, or any little story, or? And also, I wanted to know what you find most challenging about the job of being a cinematographer.
Oh.
Now we're getting down to it.
I think there was, some of the biggest challenges were just simply to do with time, which is, I know it sounds like a sort of reasonably dull answer, but it's the truth, and it's the thing that we all fight, all of us in the room. And in this case, it was particularly difficult, as I said, but towards the end of the shoot, when we were effectively had 6-hour days, and so if anything went wrong, it fucked us really quickly, and we couldn't, we had to find a way of absorbing things and moving on very quickly and making very quick decisions about if something just didn't look right. There was no sort of like, oh, well, let's stand around for an hour and fiddle with it. We'd got to think of something else and think of something quite quickly. So I think from a sort of scheduling point of view, it was a sort of logistical nightmare, because you've got all of these disparate elements that Rory playing eight characters, 8 characters, and then how that sort of deals, or how that impacts the schedule, and then of course the daylight hours, how that impacts the schedule, and the fact that as well that we're shooting chronologically and how that impacts the schedule. And so when you're in that moment and you are absorbed in your sort of, on a shot-by-shot basis, that, everybody gets that kind of tunnel vision that you have. It's like you've still got these other external elements telling you don't have time to even look at this. We've got to be thinking about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So in a sense, I suppose the biggest challenge was not sort of ever feeling as a filmmaker we were landing on the things that we wanted to land on. In retrospect, I think we did, but it just didn't feel like that at the time. And so from a sort of psychological point of view, it made it very dissatisfying or unsatisfying, because you never feel like you're really hitting it. You're just chasing your tail,
But there's often an energy that comes out of those, if you've got 20 minutes to do this, and you've got to think fast.
Yeah.
There is an energy, as long as everyone's along for the ride, to that.
I mean, yeah.
And that's like low budget. That's what I meant. And that idea of going back to basics is that it's a kind of a low budget. We've just got to fix it now.
Yeah.
And I guess you've got Alex, who's the writer, so he can change stuff. If he
Well,
really wants to.
exactly. And he's a quick thinker. He's a fast thinker. I mean, a couple of incidents where, there was one incident where towards the end where the boy, there's the breech birth, not the breech birth, the one at the cesarean, let's call it that, where that happens, and what the plan was that we would dig this hole in the lawn of this house, and Rory would be in the hole, and then the SFX had created this kind of false stomach that Rory would then sort of pop out of, right? And well, not pop out.
Sounds simple.
He would just come out in the way in which he was going to come out of the hole, the stomach, and the hole was too small, which was an issue. And then they tried to dig it deeper, and they went through a water main in the house. And so it was the house, and there was this entire farm, so everything was shut off. There was no water, and the boy's stomach. There would never been. I think there'd sort of been a kind of lack of communication between certain departments, and it was not quite big enough. It was really small. It was tiny. And it just didn't make any sense, because it would have just worked as more of a sort of as a big thick necklace for Rory to wear, as opposed to a stomach for him to kind of come out of. So that was one of those moments where it was like 3 a.m. and we had an hour before sunrise, and we were all just standing around staring at this thing and the hole and no water, and the owners of the house, not liking us at that particular moment, thinking, should we just give up? It's all right to just give up, isn't it? We can just give up.
We've got enough.
We've got enough.
We've
Let's move on. We've probably got a movie. There's no shame in giving up. But no, I mean, it's just like one of those moments like, fuck it, we've got to do this. Let's just move that out of the way, and let's just get that out of here. Just get it out of here, and let's do this. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, look, it happens to everyone, doesn't it? Doesn't it?
That specific thing. Any more questions? Come on, they're free. No charge. Oh, hello. Oh, the other side.
I wanted to go back quickly to this way of working, and I think Alex described it as not overbake the photography. And I would like to know, is it something that you have an approach to, or is it a natural feeling that comes from it when you start preparing for it? And also, how long does it take to prepare for a film like this? Like, how much is a pre-production time?
Well, the pre-production time is however much they give us. So there's that. In terms of, we use the time wisely, obviously, or as best we can. In terms of sort of approaching the photography of it, I think, that on the one hand, we sort of, Laurie, as you said earlier, it's like Alex and I, we kind of have a shorthand, so we sort of share the same aesthetic, I suppose, the same, with kind of similar tastes. Not exactly the same taste. I think it's taste in music, isn't it? But he. So we've already got that shorthand, but then also in terms of like, so there's no need for really for any kind of references or anything like that, and we always tend to sort of avoid referencing other films. We just don't really do it. Because it's not other films that we're making, and we're trying to make this movie, and it's that it needs to feel like it's got its own place in the world, I suppose. And of course, everybody is influenced externally anyway, subconsciously or not. So if there is something that we feel is familiar, there'll be a sort of we'll understand in a sense what it is that we are. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I mean, basically, is that we sort of make it up from the very beginning. We make it up as we go along, and we just it has to look it just has to look the best it can possibly look in terms of telling that story, and also obviously aesthetically. And if it doesn't, then we get very upset.
Is there a balance? I mean, I think it's obviously the collaboration with a director and a DP is the allowance that you might get to give, which that Alex might give you to get a shot right over performance. Do you know what I mean? It's not that you want to do it, get a shot right just because it doesn't matter what the performance is, because that's the balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he still wants good shots.
Yes.
But,
yeah,
but I mean, then you've got to make the performances, give them space.
100%. And so, so in terms of the way things are put together from a sort of photographic perspective, is that, and again, it's like I was saying earlier, it's like we create the world, and then and it's a 360-degree kind of world, conceptually as well as practically, as much as possible, and then we go in and, the actors have all the freedom, as much of freedom as they want, or as much as we can give them, unless it comes to very specific things. So obviously there are going to be specific visual beats that you need to hit in order to make the other things kind of flourish. But predominantly we allow the actors as much space as possible, because ultimately, it's like in the case of someone like Jessie, it's like she's going to give us everything, and we're here to sort of serve that in a way. But once we've reached that point, the moment that Jessie walks onto set the very first day, we already know in our minds what this movie is going to look like, and before we've shot a single frame, we have a very, very good idea of what it's going to look like, and how we're going to approach that look. But it's all been stitched together in this way that still has a sort of flexibility to kind of breathe around whatever is going to happen, and particularly with the actors, and also particularly with any kind of curveballs that you might get, whilst still maintaining that aesthetic that we're adhering to. Does that make sense?
Oh.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
Many of your films have got a lovely recipe of old glass and tungsten.
Yeah.
What is it about tungsten that you love so much? What does it bring to your imagery?
I always kind of say, like, there's the way it sort of pollutes with every other kind of light that I really enjoy, particularly sort of natural daylight. But there's also a sort of texture to it that I sort of see or pick up on, particularly the way in which it can fill a room, and also the way in which it kind of hits skin. And again, I say this with the caveat that it's all a question of taste. So I've, along the way, I've had many debates with people about, like, you would never tell the difference. You just wouldn't. If you put up this particular light, this LED or whatever, and you do this to it, and you put a tungsten light right next to it, and you do this to it, you're never going to tell the difference. Whilst I think on the surface that might be true, I don't know. I just thought, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I just sort of prefer the sort of the elegance of it, I guess, but also the kind of accidents that happen with tungsten that you don't really get with any other source that's completely controlled, that you have complete control over, which on a practical level is brilliant and really, really useful. And we used a hell of a lot of LED on this because it was perfect for our needs, but we also used a lot of tungsten as well. So you can strike a balance between those two things, that's fine. But I find with tungsten that there are things that happen, there's magic that kind of happens that you would never have thought of doing. It just sort of happens naturally. And you can either kind of try and repair it, or you can just sort of go with it. And I kind of love that look, you know.
You can feel it in a lot of your enclosed rooms. It's almost like a volume. There's a density to, for example, in the flashback scene. I think that really proves what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think
there's a richness to your imagery.
I think volume is a good way of describing it, actually, because it really does. There's something that happens. It blossoms into a room. You know, people might disagree, and that's fine. But it's, you know, for me personally, I think that's why I always kind of go back to it.
Is there a combination though of obviously the contrast handling of a lens and the sensor, and then LUTs, and then all of that sort of caper?
Yeah,
I mean, it's obviously it's in combination with all of those things.
All of that. It's all of that. Every element that you choose is like the way in which, you know, a particular type of light is going to interact with a particular type of glass. It's going to be there's, you know, there are infinite ways you can do that. Yeah, so you're right, Laurie. Yeah, it is about how they all react together. But I suppose also when we talk about like enabling spaces, and, you know, putting those actors in the room, you know, putting the actors in the room. There is a way in which you can. And my ideal is to light a space, but it can look. You can put a camera anywhere and it's going to work. You know, that is the sort of, that's the way, that's what I always strive for, rather than having, if you know, it's like, okay, now we're going to turn around. It's like, well, we can do this. We're already turned around. You know,
right? Don't show off.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, it's like, you know, I'm not saying it looks any good. I'm just saying, like.
I mean, it looks like that, you know. I think that there's an elegance, there's a clear elegance to your work. I think always is that that it looks, you make it look very easy. That's what.
Well, yeah, and ultimately it's got to be practical, isn't it? Because it's like otherwise you're never going to just get through the day. I mean, I think in the case of the thing we've just done, Civil War, it's like there were times when we were shooting and Todd, the gaffer, we've worked together a couple of times, and he was like, he would look at me and he would just be like, Rob, what are we doing? What are we doing? And this was in a complete daylight situation. There were no lights on the set, and there were choices that we were making. And he's like, what are we doing? And I would just say, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. Okay.
Shouldn't it be the other way around?
Yeah, because it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And it was literally like, I suppose, in a way, the abrasiveness of what we were doing in that particular moment is going to be offset. And it needs to be this. It absolutely needs to be this right now. It needs to be something that is very abrasive to look at and isn't sort of, you know, doesn't have the poetry that you would hope, but
because it's about the story, not about the being so perfect.
Yeah.
Is there any more questions? There's one in the middle.
Thank you. Hello. If you cast your mind back to shooting, were there any shots or camera work that you would have liked to have done but were perhaps limited either down to scheduling or spaces? Or were there any shots or camera work that you would have liked to have seen in the final cut but didn't make it?
I think the short answer is yes to both of those questions. There are always things that you feel, it's a shame that didn't make the cut, you know. But at the same time, I suppose each image is, in a way, it's designed to be disposable, I guess, or at least that's the way I think of it now, so that you don't become too precious about things in that sense. So you think more in terms of the sort of bigger picture. So when you work through shots and something doesn't work, you can either, I think you sort of know immediately not whether it's not going to work or not, because you can make it work, but you know immediately, okay, this is going to take probably another 5 goes at it, or I'm going to need to do this, this, and this in order to make this work. Do we sacrifice the next 5 things that we're going to do in order to make that right? No, we don't. We move on. And again, it all comes down to sort of the bigger picture, you know. So I think in some respects, I don't really think about, you know, the shots I would have liked to have done, because they've sort of disappeared in the ether now. And also the shots that never made it into the movie, that's okay too, because the movie it's made up of the shots that were only ever going to be in that film. Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah.
But I always see, I don't know about you, but like when you work on a shot, you kind of really, everything goes into it, right? And everybody in the room just focuses in on this one single moment. And the moment you built up to it, and you execute the moment, and then it's gone, and it's just gone. And then you suddenly everybody's focusing on the next moment with the same sort of, you know,
Every shot is as important as
laser
every
precision.
other shot
And then
when you're doing it.
yeah, and
But then it just disappears.
and it just disappears, and it's gone. And then and that's, I kind of like that, you know.
Well, if they kept them, if we only shot the ones that were really needed, we'd be shooting 1-to-1.
Well, yeah,
The ratio would be very low.
it's true.
I think that's probably time for questions. I've just got five very quick. I want to make this a thing. 5 very quick questions that I don't want you to think about too hard.
Yeah.
What book are you reading or referencing at the moment?
I'm reading. I'm not referencing anything specifically, but I'm reading. I'm actually reading 2 books at the moment. I'm reading one about the fall. It's called The Big Midweek, and it's written by Steve Hanley, who was a bass player in the Fall. I don't really know anything about the Fall, and it shames me to say, because there's a good friend of mine in the room who would probably hate me to say that, but it's actually a really amazing. I love music. I love reading about music bands and the way these sort of interactions happen, and the way things just fall apart all the time. I love it. Even if I don't like the band, I just really find it interesting. The other thing is called The English Heretic, which is sort of like it's actually about kind of folk horror in a sense. And it was given to me by a friend of mine who's doing a PhD in folk horror, funnily enough. Okay. It's called The English Heretic, and it's like the first chapter is all about this guy who wrote the book. He's decided to put like the blue plaques that you put up, but he's decided to put these black plaques up in specific villages around Essex and Suffolk that were related to the making of the Witchfinder General. And the director who tragically died. I mean, that was his only second movie, I think. He died and he was like really young. He was in his mid-20s maybe. Anyway, he goes on to sort of like kind of create this really odd world where somehow he draws parallels between the Witchfinder and John Lennon and
Wow. Okay.
all this stuff. Anyway, sorry,
There's one
I'm
to look for.
digressing.
The second one is last film or TV show that you saw, old or new, where the cinematography excited you.
I watched the first half of Speed last night. Speed. You know, Keanu Reeves,
Bond.
Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
Just love it. I
Jan de
love
Bont direct
a
that?
90s movie.
Who directed that? So Jan de Bont
should know,
shot
shouldn't I?
it, didn't he?
Jan de Bont.
Did he direct it? Anyway. There you go.
Yeah, I love it. I love a 90s movie.
Yeah.
I love the aesthetic. I mean, like Flatliners. If you look at Flatliners now, and the risks they were taking, and that was like a big budget mainstream movie at the time. It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's like completely crazy, like theatrically insane. And I do find that sometimes now when I watch stuff, I find it a little bit conservative by comparison. Yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not being sort of a retrospective, well, it used to be better in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
What's your cinematic joy and what's your cinematic hell?
Oh, God. Cinematic joy is when you there's no way of saying this without sounding really pretentious, but it's actually there are two. Can I have two?
Yes.
Well, the first one is when when you're in the moment, the camera's turning, the thing is happening, everything is just still, quiet, and you're looking through the camera, and this thing is happening that is, it's like time is, it's almost slowing down, but it's like, it's kind of opening up in front of you, and you are seeing something for the very first time. That is a real joy. Mm. And then the second thing is watching a movie about a year later, a little bit like this, is kind of a bit of a joy.
Mm. Is there a hell?
There are so many hells.
Okay, we'll get past that. You can only keep one lens to shoot everything from now on. What is it?
It's the 55mm H series.
Okay, good. And one word or a very quick piece of advice you'd give to your younger self.
Don't do it.
There you go. Okay. Alex has said that he's planning to stop directing for a while.
That's correct.
You've obviously shot things, been mad, back-to-back busy.
Yeah.
Are you retiring?
I'm thinking about it. Thinking about it.
Don't. We don't want you to retire. Just before we finish, I want to thank Panavision and Shift 4, as ever, for their incredible support, and thank you, View Cinemas, for having us. But mainly, I wanted to thank Rob Hardy ASC BSC.
Thank Laurie. Thanks, mate.